This is Sci-Fi LYSIS, breaking down the science inside your favourite stories. Now, I have to confess, I have a bit of a problem. I loved Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of Time, but as a bit of a biology nerd, I can't stop myself from picking over the scientific ideas in the story. So let's go over it all and see if I can't use the premise to make a harder sci-fi story instead. Plot summary. Spoiler warning. Genius scientist Avrana Kern wants to seed a new planet with monkeys, inject them with a nanovirus that accelerates their evolution, in the hopes of creating loyal servants that are superior to humans. Unfortunately, the monkeys are blown up by protesters, and the virus infects spiders that are already living on the planet. Around her, the first human empire that's colonized space collapses into civil war, and Kern goes into stasis inside her satellite, floating above the planet, linked to an AI support system. Millennia later, the generation ship Gilgamesh is fleeing a dying Earth in search of a new home. Kern awakens and forces them to go to another planet, which proves uninhabitable. There's lots of subplot with the humans turning on each other along their journey there and back again. The ship returns to find that spider society has evolved to the point of living on the edge of space, thanks to Kern's assistance through a long period of accelerated evolution. During the final battle, the humans are captured, but the spiders decide to inject them with the nanovirus, which somehow makes them nice. So they all decide to get along, build a new spaceship together, and set off on an adventure to a distant star that is emitting strange signals. Science issues. So first let me say that I love this story, since evolution is very difficult to fit into conventional narratives, and I think Tchaikovsky did a great job of tackling the subject. He got around the need to cover vast periods of time through cryosleep and time dilation for the humans, and transmissible memories and recycled character names for the spiders. In this analysis, I won't be looking at the biology of computer-brain interfaces and mind uploads. Instead, I want to focus on the two most interesting aspects of the story, the virus itself and the spiders. The virus. So, viruses are useful in the real world for horizontal gene transfer between species, which accelerates evolution. As an example, it's believed a retrovirus delivered the gene for the protein syncytin into the distant ancestors of mammals, allowing them to evolve placentas. The nanovirus, however, is presented as having some kind of inbuilt engineered agency, some motivation for creating human-like intelligent creatures. One major problem I had with the biology was this: why would a virus that is optimized for primate evolution be compatible with arthropods? It was somehow designed to reject all other vertebrates living on the planet, such as mice and deer, but it was compatible with multiple invertebrate lineages. In the real world, there are only a couple of viruses capable of infecting both arthropods and vertebrates. The premise also seems to assume that there's a relatively predictable path from primates to more intelligent creatures like humans, whereas in reality there was probably a really special set of circumstances to allow that to happen, and we don't really understand what they were. Why would an uncontrolled planet-wide experiment on monkeys produce better results than something done on a smaller scale in a lab? That seems pretty chaotic, but I don't know, kind of fun. Another major issue is that the nanovirus transmits memories between generations of spiders. This is later isolated by the spiders as a form of rapid communication, like a newspaper. Humans don't have a bad theory of how the brain works, so I'll give Tchaikovsky a pass on this one. Why not? It's kind of fun. And we do know that multiple viruses are linked to mental disorders, and rabies changes behavior. Complex memories are a bit of a stretch, but I'll let him get away with this one. The spiders. So in the story, the jumping spiders are described as being about a meter long, and there is a tarantula type of spider that's 12 times larger. When a creature has an exoskeleton, the size of the organism is limited due to the forces on the joints and the muscle attachment points. Though on a hypothetical planet, the size of the organism could be increased by lowering the gravity, if it's a smaller planet, or increasing the density of the atmosphere. And we do know in the past there have been arthropods that have been extremely large, living in the ocean where the water supports their body. A more serious issue is that arthropod body size is limited by the demands of molting. As the organisms get larger, the process becomes longer, which leaves the organism vulnerable to attack while its exoskeleton is soft. And it's described as taking a month, later in the story. This is unlikely to have been feasible when the spiders were living under much more primitive conditions as hunters. As a final note, the circulatory and respiratory system of arthropods are limited. I will give Tchaikovsky a point for mentioning that their book lungs had evolved muscles to actively pump them, and vertebrate circulation and respiration was a lot simpler during the earlier stages of their evolution when they were smaller organisms. We do know that when oxygen levels are higher, as I mentioned in the book, dragonflies were able to grow much larger, which has been confirmed in laboratory tests of living dragonflies. Unfortunately, in those tests, all other orders of insects shrunk, and we have no data on spiders and their response to higher oxygen levels, but there are no giant ones in the fossil record from the time of higher oxygen levels. So yeah, a little bit of a stretch having spiders the size approximately of humans. A couple of cool things though with the spiders. They domesticated aphids as a fallback to hunting, and some real spiders are nectar feeders, and it mirrors how ants farm aphids. Spider cities in the book get up to 10,000 individuals, which copies social spiders which live in the Brazilian rainforest and cooperate in these giant nests that stretch between trees. During the story, there's a process where the spiders copy human technology's evolution, from armor to metal weapons that are stolen from ants, to slingshots and firebombs, chemical weapons, even radio and computers in the end via a networked ant computer. Even a kind of television is briefly mentioned. This was kind of fun, but also a bit predictable. Like, you get to about halfway through and you're like, oh, this is just retelling human history. There was even a kind of inverse feminism with oppressed male spiders and a war between religious and rationalist factions. So I would chalk that up as a big missed opportunity to inject some more imagination, considering how a arthropod would develop a different kind of society to humans. Now to the fix. Personal taste disclaimer, this is just how I would rewrite the story, starting from the same basic premise. First things first, at 160,000 words, the story is far too long. I would cut the half of the story from the human point of view and be left with the more interesting part focusing on the spiders and their evolution. And the best way to tell this story would be from a single point of view as Kern, the genius scientist. Now, where to begin? Kern is a functionally immortal genius who melded her organic brain with an AI backup assistant. She has set up a secret research facility on the surface of a planet so she could actively drive the project herself, because she's a bit of a control freak. The planet is mostly ocean, apart from a scattering of small islands, so it wasn't prime territory for the spacefaring empire to colonize. A team of human volunteers arrive to help with the project, eager to help Kern perfect humanity, but one among them is a terrorist who unleashes a bioweapon which destroys all human tissues on the island. The AI part of Kern survives, unsure of its humanity with its organic remnants lost. She is now confined to the facility, only able to act through robotic laboratory arms and communication terminals. Unwilling to trust humanity again, and without any human tissues on hand to work with, she is forced to resort to using the most intelligent alternative available, jumping spiders that wander into the facility from the terraformed planet's primitive ecosystem. Kern modifies the spiders to make them larger and more intelligent, but quickly runs into biophysical limits. At the same time, she's monitoring the human space empire and discovers that they are destroying themselves in a civil war. This hardens her resolve that her creatures will never suffer from the same flaws as human beings. She realizes that both humans and spiders are descended from predators, and their instincts for aggression have to be overcome. So she engineers the spiders to be cooperative, able to communicate and work together to operate simple machines of her construction. Eventually, when her masses of coordinating spiders reach approximately the mass of a human being, she reaches the limit of cooperativity, and her creations start displaying disobedience, tendencies for self-preservation and aggression, making Kern doubt the project. To counter this, she maintains centralized control of spider reproduction inside the lab to prevent her creations from making the same mistakes that human beings have made in the past. Kern detects more signals from space that indicates that the Empire is rising again, and her creations have to be ready to face them. Kern is forced to create crops and teach the spiders how to do agriculture, and has to give up control of spider reproduction so that numbers can increase. The spiders start growing food and making materials to build larger and more complicated machines, which coincidentally don't end up in humanoid shapes. They explore all sorts of possibilities about how they organize their collective bodies. The population rapidly expands, and coalitions of spider collectors with different genetics start turning on each other. The spiders also start building ships to sail to other islands, meaning that they would forever slip beyond Kern's loving influence and control. To stop the unending civil war, Kern picks one terrestrial strain that's starting to dominate and releases a bioweapon to help it overcome all other strains and achieve final victory and peace and unity, anything to prepare for the arrival of the human threat. But Kern is left worried about the limited genetic diversity of the population. After a bit of a time skip, the dominant spider clones have become skeptical of Kern, growing ever more curious about what is inside her locked-off research facility. They're also threatened by the thought of her releasing a bioweapon that could kill them as well. The dominant, aggressive clone of spiders refuses to allow new creations to leave the lab and threaten their dominance. Kern detects that humans are about to arrive on the planet at any moment, so she resorts to telling the spiders the truth about the human space monsters. But they still don't believe her. Instead, they break into her laboratory, and they discover the organic remains of her body, and Kern has to confess that she was once human. Because of this, she knows that the humans who are coming are extremely dangerous. Finally, the aggressive spider clones believe Kern and allow her to develop a new clone of spiders to help them prepare for the battle. But the dominant clones insist on staying in control of the system. So Kern repeats her long series of genetic enhancements from scratch to produce a spider lineage with a peaceful temperament, perfect obedience, and no limit to the size of its cooperation. But their nature allows them to be exploited by the dominant first strain. When the humans arrive, they have better technology, but the spiders have numbers and home advantage. Kern also develops a fiber optic cable system capable of coordinating the spiders across the islands, but the dominant strain is reluctant to follow her orders. As the humans finally land on the planet as an expeditionary force, the spiders hide in the honeycomb of tunnels below ground, leaving their constructs abandoned. When they see an opportunity, the aggressive spider clones ignore the order to wait and attack using their constructs, as they once did successfully against the other spider strains. The humans fight back and wipe out the dominant aggressive strain with ease, but that leaves the new peaceful strain of clones alive, hiding deep inside the rocks of the island. As a final ploy, Kern sends a message to the humans pretending to be a lost human colony in one of the locations that those awful alien spiders don't live. Spiders living inside human constructs lure the visiting humans into lowering their guard, and the mothership lands near the facility and opens its doors. In a final battle, the unified mass of the cooperative spiders pour out of the rocks to deliver the same bioweapon used on the facility long ago by the terrorist, which Kern kept preserved all of these years, being the diligent scientist that she is. But there's an unhappy ending. The humans are resistant to this ancient bioweapon technology after millennia of fighting among themselves. The remaining cooperative spiders are destroyed. Kern's AI module is captured as a curiosity of a forgotten age. So the idea of her perfect cooperation and peace under her benevolent control led to systemic weakness and insufficient numbers. If Kern had let the spiders colonize the ocean and the other islands, they might have had sufficient numbers and developed weapons and independent coordination and survival drive to fight the humans off. But because she insisted on making them peaceful and on making them subservient to her, infinite wisdom, she set them up for failure and herself for capture. So how would you have rewritten Children of Time, starting with the same basic premise? I'd love to hear your ideas in the comments below. Next episode, we'll have a look at the sci-fi classic War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Fans of biology-focused hard science fiction should check out Our Vitreous Womb, my own series of novellas that explore a distant future for humanity built on pure biotechnology. Ebooks out on Amazon starting April 1st.